many of you enjoy old films? Now, I can only speak for myself, but I love old movies. In my opinion, to be able to watch and enjoy these movies seriously, though, you need to understand the mindset and the fears of an average viewer when it was released. Today, we're going to put ourselves in the mindset of someone in the year of 1974. The United States was still at war in Vietnam, which it was being aired on TV for all the viewers back at home, which is as morbid as that may sound, it was attributed to a big reason why the war was finally ended. But the public being able to see the horrors of real war every night on TV made the country divide on the opinions of the war. It had a real effect on America's morale. Not only that, the United States impeached President Nixon after him finding out he was indeed a crook. All this created some real chaos. It's not all it did. It created some good art too. On this episode of Sloppy Horror, we will dive into a piece of that art. Tobe Hooper's 1974 classic, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A film in which a van full of curious teenagers are killed in rural Texas by a family of cannibals, whose scariest member, Leatherface, wears multiple masks made from other people's skin, and he wields a chainsaw. Hence the title. Texas Chainsaw Massacre hit theaters October 11th of '74, and it grossed $30 million at the box office, which is massive considering its $80,000 budget. This led to 8 more movies starring Leatherface. The way this movie was shot, it looked raw, real, and different from any other horror picture before it. It revolutionized the slasher genre, and it became one of the most talked about movies ever made. Tobe and his crew made something larger than themselves. And I'm not an actor nor a director, but I imagine that has to feel pretty surreal. So if you're interested in hearing about a movie about a family of cannibals in the middle of nowhere, Texas, a movie that used 8 dead cows, 3 dead goats, 2 dead dogs, 2 dead deer, 1 dead cat, 1 dead chicken, and a dead armadillo as a prop, oh yeah, and 2 human skeletons, you're in the right place, my friend. So, grab a bowl of chili, and let's learn about how the Sawless family. It's time to talk about Chainsaw. Boom! Welcome to the Sloppy Horror Podcast. I am your host, and your scary movie companion, Christian Ramey. And today we're here with the producer, Ozark Mark. What's going on, Mark?
How you doing? I'm here every day, not just today. I'm a part of this show as well.
Oh, I know.
But I also make it sound so good. So you know that little lovely sound that's going in your ears right now?
Oh, absolutely.
I make it fantastic.
I like to give you such a grand introduction, okay?
I'm a pretty grand kind of guy.
So, for everyone listening at home, okay, all these beautiful sounds and all this beautiful mixing and mastering is done by Ozark Mark.
That's right, it is.
That's his real name.
Yes.
So, I'm really happy today, Mark, because we get to talk about one of the best horror films to ever exist, and that's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Ooh.
Yeah, buddy.
This is a good one, especially for me. Not because of, like, the actual slasher stuff, and the character Leatherface obviously is iconic, and the whole thing is a very iconic movie. But my favorite thing I'm excited about to talk about as well is how this movie was shot.
Oh, absolutely.
Doing from a producer aspect, that interests me a little bit more. And the way this was shot and all the things you've taught me or told me about this movie in the past just makes it so more enjoyable to watch, knowing all this. Now, if you didn't know all this stuff before, you kind of just look at it as a little cheesy slasher and kind of like really bad acting in some parts of it. But when you learn about what happened and how it was filmed, you should be excited. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, man. That's actually a great way to kind of segue into it, because some people, I mean, like I said in the intro, people can't necessarily. It's hard for people to watch old films and to understand how they were scary at that time frame if they look cheesy to them. But I mean, think of 1974, man. There's not a lot of horror flicks out before that. I mean, there are horror films, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of Hammer films, you know, the Dracula and the Universal monsters. It was shot in a way that wasn't terrifying and raw. It was scary monster pics. Friday night for the spooktacular, the double monster picture. See Dracula and see the Mummy.
Yeah.
And which is badass. I still love the classic monsters. But Texas Chainsaw, in my opinion, was the first one to start that really real-looking horror where you're like, you leave the theater like, oh my God. Or, you know, you leave watching it like, that was kind of real, dude. That was kind of weird. And there's no score throughout the whole movie. There's no music, so it really kind of sets a different pace throughout it.
That's the one big thing here, because you're spoiled, really, and whether you realize it or not, in films, you're spoiled by the music, because the music really either amplifies it, it tells you when to be scared, tells you when be excited, joyful. Like, music really makes you believe that you're in a movie. That helps the movie element. Like, oh, I'm watching a movie. That kind of clicks, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah,
and the fact about this movie is, dude, I mean, the way they did this, there's no music for most of it. You just hear the raw sounds. So it kind of makes you feel in a way that you are just there watching it. Mm-hmm. Like, it makes you, it's just, no
it's like,
music.
like somebody shot it with their own camera.
Yes.
It's like it was a real event, and most people thought that way. I mean, some people were still convinced. There was so much legend and rumor behind this movie, because you also have to put yourself, nowadays, oh, there's a hit sensation out. Everybody watch Tiger King. Oh, that's cool. I have Netflix. Oh, I don't. No worries, man. Here's my password. Everyone watches the same thing, and TV was similar to that way. Everybody had the same channels, but as far as movies, man, in order to see this, you had to go to the theaters, and then in the 80s, they got their Betamax and went to VHS, and then that's when the movie kind of resurged again and had a second life, and that's how a lot of us found out about it. But to be honest, it was, if you don't have the opportunity to sit and watch a movie over and over on DVD, sitting on your couch, doing what you do with your significant other, you don't tear into it. If you just see something once, it sits with you way different at a drive-in. These people seeing this thought they were watching a murder film, like straight up murder film.
That's kind of almost basically what it is.
Absolutely.
I mean, half the movie is just screaming and running and chainsaw sounds. Like, half of it is just watching people getting murdered. And the fact is, too, man, is some of these scenes, like, you think about it, and that was a horrible idea. Like, they used, like you said, I'm pretty sure they used a real chainsaw.
They did?
With the chain on it. This is 1970, so think about it now. That's like 50 years ago almost.
I know.
To the technology now, that's like when the phone was first invented or something. You know what I mean? Like, that's the technology difference and the special effects the difference. So this dude, he's whoever the actor is, what's his name?
Gunnar Hansen.
Gunnar Hansen. He was running around chasing this girl within feet of her with a real chainsaw. He's running at full speed through the woods at night in some of these times.
With a mask on.
With a mask on. And with a running chainsaw. Like, that is so
not smart.
Dangerous. But it makes it so much more terrifying, because you're like, this looks real. That's because it was. Because it was.
So if you're going to ask yourself, what's going to make, us be able to talk about a movie this far down the line, this many years down the line, I want to kind of talk about the lightning in the bottle that they kind of captured. Because as you mentioned, these aren't A-plus actors. This isn't a large budget. There's no music. Everything was very different. So what made Texas Chainsaw Texas Chainsaw? And I kind of want to get into that. And we also mentioned Gunnar Hansen, the guy who played Leatherface. And a lot of my source for the info I know on this is there's a really great book that Gunnar did. It was called Texas Chainsaw Confidential. And he wrote his take on what happened on the filming. And, it's great. It really is. And he also made it an Audible book as well, like an audio one. So it's kind of cool to hear somebody read their own words and just, I don't know, I'm a nerd. So I really enjoyed it. But if you're a big Texas Chainsaw person, I really recommend listening to it. But what made this movie work? Okay, well, there's a number of things. The first thing being the title, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That stands out, man. There was a slew of horror films afterwards in the 80s that were, Slumber Party Massacre, Lawnmower Massacre. All these massacre movies came out.
It seems like Massacre was really the main eye catcher in that title, because I don't think there's ever been like a massacre before. Like, massacre is this
exactly
very powerful word,
and chainsaw too, man. It just adds a chainsaw massacre. It just was a perfect title.
Now
okay?
let me ask you this just before we get to any further, because I've wondered about this. So is this movie Texas Chainsaw Massacre the very reason why there's a chainsaw guy in every haunted house.
Oh, absolutely, man. And to be honest with you, they kind of revolutionized the chainsaw into a weapon. It wasn't used like that in other movies, and that's why you kind of had that in Scarface, and that scene. It really worked its way into movies, but obviously, I'm a haunter. I work for, haunted houses and shit, and you're right, every one, they have the chainsaw guy. It works, dude. It really does. And if you think about it, it's a silly weapon. I mean, it bogs down simple. All you got to do is throw a log or any large instrument at him, and his chain is going to bog, and the system's going to cut out. You just kind of have to be quicker than a haymaker.
You got to get the first good, like, real lunge.
Yeah.
It's so biggy, dude. It's like a horrible weapon. It's like,
Absolutely.
But it's so terrifying. Just the sound. It's like ear-piercing sound.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really makes it such a scary weapon. And, just every time you hear a chainsaw, I don't think you think of somebody cutting a tree down initially.
Nope.
Or maybe you do it first, but you're always going to think about, like, is somebody cutting down a tree or somebody getting murdered because of this movie? It just made the chainsaw, because I don't think anybody ever thought of a chainsaw really as a weapon, maybe, that I could think of.
So I'll give you a little spark on how Tobe Hooper came up with that. So I guess he was in a grocery store. I forget or not a grocery store, but like a Kmart or a Sears. It was in the holiday season in the 70s. And he got pinned inside the store because there were so many people. It's like holiday shopping, and he was by the chainsaw rack. And he just had that little glimmer of an idea. Man, if I just wanted to get out of here, and just started running. And I guess that's how he came up with that idea. So it's kind of a weird little tidbit, but
I've had those moments.
Oh, hell yeah. Everybody does, dude.
I can't. Have you ever thought of when you're in a traffic jam, or if somebody cuts you off, or somebody slows in front of you? Like, you remember the game Twisted Metal?
Oh, yeah.
I wish you so bad sometimes I could just have two machine guns pop out of the hood and just mow them down real quick and get out of there. Same thing with that.
No, absolutely. I have those crazy thoughts all the time. You just can't act on them, Mark. That's why you watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
So let's think. We got a title going for us. We got chainsaw going for us. So what made these actors work? What made these actors work was that they weren't high-dollar actors. These were young, first-time actors, most of them, and
you can definitely tell in some of the scenes when you look back on this that this must be their first time.
But the way the flick was shot, man, they very under budget. These people really did not get paid, and I'll go into that further later. But these people did not make much, like really no money, and the movie made, lots of fucking money, $30 million, and these people made nothing.
$30 million?
Yeah, that's how much this movie grossed
in the 70s.
Yeah,
or is that all time or just like
like box office?
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Box office.
In the 70s.
In the 70s. And they only spent $80,000 on the movie.
$80,000 budget. Now, if you think, even in the 70s, that's still a lot of money. But even that is not a high budget for a movie. Like, you don't take into effect of how much, especially, now it's a little bit easier because you got technology and stuff. Like, you got people making movies on iPhones and crap like that. But
right.
Back in that, that budget is not high whatsoever.
So, yeah, these people didn't make anything. But that's why it worked. These were young, starving actors and actresses and people that wanted to be involved in this. And, you can't take Leonardo DiCaprio and put him in the Texas heat for a week. We're not really going to pay you. This is a real chainsaw. Things are crazy. People don't work like that. That's not how it works. But these people were so willing to, be a part of something. That's why it works. So we have a title going for us. We have the chainsaw. And we have these actors and actresses who are really kind of down to do whatever just to get into the industry, okay? These things all kind of rolled together, and then the product itself, the like you said, the way that they filmed this looked so raw, and it scared so many people on a different level, and it became a legend. A legend is what it became. People know the name Leatherface.
Yeah.
No matter where you're at, you've heard the term Leatherface.
Now, is the character Leatherface, that's based, or not fully based upon, but inspired, or however you want to say it, on an actual serial killer? or something like that.
Yes, you're not completely wrong with that. So that's kind of a snowball of ideas of what they have this for. So there was Ed Gein, obviously the Wisconsin killer who skinned people and made little trinkets and shit out of skin, lampshades and whatnot.
Ew.
Also, Buffalo Bill was inspired by him, Silence of the Lambs. But they kind of rolled that excuse me, they rolled that together also with a few other ideas. So there was a big oil crisis going on inside the country, and also it was kind of like a little bit of the Industrial Revolution kind of thing going on. Machinery was taking over people's jobs, and the way that this movie was portrayed was that, like, no jobs has really affected this rural community, and this family has taken it to extremes. So the oil crisis, Ed Gein, and a few other little things, the chainsaw idea in the store. He kind of went home and just kind of threw everything together. So it wasn't one thing specifically, but all of those together, he threw it together. Mm-hmm. And with Leatherface, too, I don't know how many of you guys know this. Obviously, my horror heads do, but he's got 3 different masks. You know that, Ozark Mark?
No. Well, no, I did not know that. I know he's got like just the one plain one, I guess, or whatever. I guess that's the killing mask you said, right?
Yes, he has so that killing mask, obviously, you see when he's making his kills.
Yeah, I know there's the other one where he has like lipstick on it or something.
Mm-hmm. So he has 2 female masks as well. He has the old lady and he has the pretty woman. And he wears different ones to portray what he's feeling in that moment, which is kind of an interesting contrast with Leatherface, because he's at the same time like a brooding, intimidating, cut you up with a chainsaw guy, but he's also like a sensitive person with special needs. Like he's like kind of both. He's like you don't know how to. He's got like an innocence to him. He's almost a victim in his own right. Like if he was in a good family, he probably wouldn't be killing people.
Yeah, that just creates interest. That's what makes his character so interesting too. It's just like not a typical thing, typical just guy willing to murder you. It's a dude who's, he's fucked up in the head and all this, like slightly special needs too.
Yeah, man. So, and people just did not have that kind of killer in 1974. They were like, what is people's skin?
Yeah.
He's wearing people's skin?
Yeah, something like this has really never been done before, especially in the 70s where they're not used, like you said, they're not used to it. Like nowadays, we've seen almost anything and everything, so it's hard to come up with a new idea.
This also gave it revolutionized the slasher genre. Now, there were slasher flicks before this. You've got Psycho that came out. You also had Peeping Tom, and these kind of they lit the fuse of the genre, but I would say Texas Chainsaw was the dynamite that exploded, and lots of smaller things to follow behind it. But it really set it off. It really did. That's when you saw the whole slew of all the killers. Michael Myers comes out, Jason, Freddy, all these guys start to come out, and you get these over-the-top slasher flicks. And it also introduced the final girl. You had Marilyn Burns playing Sally, and Sally killed. The last 20 minutes of this movie, it's Marilyn screaming, running from...
It is. It's just a constant, and I think... Like, there's the part where she jumps out of, like, the window, like 2 stories up, you said.
Yeah.
And you said she really did that.
Yeah, man.
Like, a lot of this stuff, like, it's just amazing to me how, like, the lack of safety in this film is crazy, but it makes it so, like, more believable, kind of more realistic that they don't have stunt doubles in this. They don't have a fake chainsaw. Like, he's running through they're running through the woods, and she gets her hair caught. She's still screaming. It's in the middle of the night. He has a mask on. He can't see anything, and he's running after this girl with it. That's, like, not safe at all. Like, he could just run into her and just murder her. And you said there's one part where she gets her hair stuck, and it's in the movie, and he just had to buy time or something, so he just started cutting down branches.
Yeah, he said, Gunner in the book, he said that he's chasing her through the woods, and like you said, he can't really see shit, and he's running, and he's like, all of a sudden he kind of catches up to her, and he kind of notices that her hair's stuck, so he just does this like weird motion and starts like cutting down branches around him and shit. Just like an intimidating like battle dance, trying to scare her.
Just running at full speed with a running chainsaw is just it's insanity to me.
Yeah, so she killed it. I mean, she really did. And Tobe admitted, like, he kind of put her through hell filming. And they said that this was, dead of summer, Texas heat, temperatures over 100-something degrees. They didn't have air-conditioned trailers. Yeah. They did not have nice amenities. I mean, these people were literally out there sweating their balls off.
Ugh.
But I'll tell you something else, though. They were a little high.
Were they?
Yeah, man, they were getting stoned out there. So I guess what had happened was people were showing up on set with pop brownies. And obviously it's the 70s, but there are scenes in this movie where everyone is pretty much high. The scene where Leatherface is cutting down that door with a chainsaw super unsafely. He's high as shit on edibles.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is, man. Next time he
makes it even worse. You're stoned on pop brownies. This is 70s weed. Like, this ain't nut. This is some hardcore shit, I guarantee it. And he's running. You're telling me this man is fully high on pop brownies cutting down a door.
Yes.
With a real chainsaw.
And
she was behind the door, up against the door. For a short period of time.
Yes.
Like, that's just a disaster to me, waiting to happen. But they pulled it off, and it's kind of cheesy in a way, but now that you know about it, you appreciate that so much more. And another filming aspect is, think about it, like the budget is stretched in this film, obviously.
Yeah.
So you're going to have him run with a real chainsaw at night and cut down a door high as shit on pop brownies.
Yes. And
do you think that was one take? I think that's like a one take.
No, it was because they only had one door.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, you got one shot to get this scene right. That's insane to me.
So
that's very crazy. Think about it. Like,
absolutely. I mean, you're just like, all right, you got this one chance not to fuck this up. Don't cut your arm off.
Don't cut your arm off. Don't cut her. Don't slice her head open. And you have to cut this door down. We only have one door. Like, the amount of pressure that's on you as an actor high on pop brownies. Like, I'll be like, oh, fuck.
Yes. So they were cutting corners there, but I told you the slew of dead animals that they used as props. But one thing I did not mention to you, Ozark Mark, you know how else they cut budget? Or cut corners? The skeletons you see in this movie, some of them are real. Real skeletons. So
would they go to like a science lab and steal like every school has that full skeleton in it?
Yeah.
Did they take one of those?
Kind of like a Return of the Living Dead, the opening scene. That's what I'm picturing. But so apparently,
where did they get skeletons from?
So I guess it's a well-known movie fact within the people that a really nice skeleton that's fake costs a fuckload of money. But you can order real skeletons from India for nothing, like next to nothing. So
that sounds ass backwards to me, but hold on a second.
Exactly.
Can you buy real skeletons from India?
Dude, there's that part in Return of the Living Dead where he was like, I guess they got a skeleton farm over there. Where do you get a skeleton with perfect teeth? And he's like, nah, just kidding with you. No skeleton farm. but for real, where are you getting these skeletons?
Stop getting sidetracked, dude. Come back to the fact that you just can't skip across this. So they had real skeletons. From India.
Now,
wait.
You don't know which ones they are in the movie.
Right.
But if I had to take a stab, I think Grandma's a real one.
Yeah.
And then I think the scene where Pam falls down and there's feathers all over before she gets put on the hook and you see the chicken in the cage and then there's like a skeleton with like another horn skeleton going through it.
Yeah.
I think that one's real as well, but there's no fucking telling, man.
No, but I'm still trying to figure out, like, okay, this is 1974. There's no internet. You can't just Google skeleton. You can't just buy a skeleton off of eBay. Like, you have to know a guy or something to get. Is there a 1-800 number to India to get these skeletons? What? See, that's just crazy to me on how they got real skeletons. So that's a fact.
I have like these weird thoughts because I'm a movie nerd, but like when you see cars or airplanes or things in the background of movies, especially, I'll give you an example. So the Blair Witch Project. she's sitting there at the Dead Man's Rock or whatever the hell it is, Coffin Rock, and she's reading this like little thing, memoir, and you hear an airplane above it. Okay, that was a real airplane with real people in it doing whatever, but they have no idea they're in this fucking movie.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
So these dead skeletons have no idea.
yeah, you're some
their
fucking
legacies.
guy in India, poor as fuck, and then like little do you know, you're in a movie that's talked about 50 years later, like unbeknownst to you, like you're just you live your whole life, and then you're like, oh yeah, you're a movie star.
Why would they just get 2 real skeletons? That's nuts.
I guess
So,
they're just cutting them corners.
Now, let me ask you this: cutting the corners. You said there's a lot of dead animals in here. Mm-hmm. Where did they get the dead animals?
So there
Is
was
there a 1-800 number for these dead animals, or are they just picking them up the side of the road?
So there were Bob, a guy named Bob and Mary. Last names aren't coming well to me right now, but those two were kind of like the production people, and they went around and yes, got roadkill, all kind of stuff. Now the opening scene where there's the dead armadillo, they wanted to use the dog at that in the beginning, but they just said there's something about a domestic animal that's just kind of fucked. Obviously,
no,
they
you can't. Not even now. I'm sure even back then, like people love dogs and people
Yeah.
love cats. Like even though somebody's dog always gets murdered in a horror movie. I don't know why. It's not scary anymore. It's just upsetting.
Yeah, and the cat always gives the pre-scare.
Yeah.
Where you're like, what's that noise? Marbles, it's only you.
But the dog always gets it, and it's to the point where you watch a horror movie, and if the person has a dog, you're like, fuck, now I'm going to have to deal with this dog dying. Dogs, don't use the dog's dead.
John Wick came back to save that.
Yeah.
Don't kill
use
dogs.
the domestic animals. But that, ew, man, they really forged, that sucks as a job, going around and finding dead animals to put in a movie. That's nuts.
Yep, not a plus. And, you know, they pieced all this shit together. And with Gunner, the guy who played Leatherface, he was not allowed to wash his clothes. And because they didn't want it to fade or fuck up. So, like, you can't go...
Because he only has one suit.
Yeah, so you can't, like, shoot the end of the movie and your suit be lighter with no blood in the scene 10 minutes before. So you get what I mean. But apparently...
Also to keep it consistent through, because, again, you don't have a whole, probably, movie crew back there having, like, 5 suits progress.
Exactly. They said the smell from all these animals and all the shit was so fucking bad, plus the Texas heat. But they said the worst smell was Gunner because of that fucking outfit, and he couldn't change it.
Dude.
There was a part where they said they're, like, eating food in the little lunch line, and they told Gunner, like, you got to get out of line, bro. Like, you smell so bad, I can't eat.
Dude, he probably smelled so horrible.
And he's a big guy. 110-degree heat type shit.
Do you know how long it took to film it?
It was about 2 weeks. It wasn't very long.
Only 2 weeks? So
Yeah.
that's 2 weeks of just straight sweat from a big guy, you know, swamp ass.
Dude.
Oh.
On pot brownies.
My nostrils hurt just thinking about that.
So obviously there was a slew of other actors and actresses in this movie, but I really think the two to focus on is, you know, the Beauty and the Beast. You got Leatherface, Gunnar Hansen, and then you have Sally, Marilyn Burns, and I think those two are really they all made it, but those two, like the romance of that at the end, you know, the final girl and the killer. There's always a little romance there, if you will. That just added a whole nother thing, because when that movie's over, all you get is a psychotic Marilyn Burns in the back of the truck just rocking back and forth screaming. You don't know what happened. Leatherface didn't die, and this chick's just riding off. Is she safe? Is she crazy? People, that's not how movies ended back then.
Yeah.
That's just not how things worked. Now, I will mention 1974 is also the release year for The Exorcist, which is one of the scariest movies ever, but that's how movies, like kind of after Rosemary's Baby, they were shot like movies. Like, this is a picture with good actors and actresses, and then Chainsaw kind of is like, you don't have to do that. You could... Another reason that, I can't not mention this. Movies in 1970s is when directors, the late 60s, 70s is when the directors started taking over and making their own pictures. But before that, movies were only made in fucking California, or New York, but California on a, somewhere on a set. The fact that Tobe Hooper made this all by himself in Texas on his own. It was very inspiring to film students. $80,000, filmed it in your own state, did what you want, and you made all this profit. So
it's like a Cinderella story almost of movies.
It is, dude. It really is. So it just was so different in that sense where they shot it in their own state. The craziness of a cannibal family changing skin, his skin on his face. It just was so unprecedented at that time that, I mean, it really did, man. It just was a home run in its own way. And it after that, the movies just really got, I don't want to say cheesy, but like in a good way. Back then, we've talked before, obviously back then, there was no CGI. So these special effects were spooky back then because you'd never seen nothing like that. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for all those corny-ass flicks to you guys now, if you would think they're corny, you wouldn't have great Avengers movies with special effects. It had to start somewhere, and that was the road to get here. But Texas Chainsaw pretty much stated, hey, you don't have to make a movie like The Exorcist or like Rosemary's Baby or like a Hammer movie before. It doesn't have to be a happy ending. It doesn't have to pander to the audience. This is just a fuck you on screen. You leave like, what happened? What did I just watch? What was that?
Exactly.
It sits with you. Not saying The Exorcist didn't, but if you're not an... Now, 1974, most people were religious, so that did affect a lot of people. But if you're not a religious person, The Exorcist might be creepy, but it's not going to get you. This movie got the people, those people. The people that The Exorcist didn't grab, Texas Chainsaw got those people.
Oh, yeah.
The fringe people where they're like, oh, man.
Like I said, the way it's almost kind of filmed like a documentary or something. Like,
yeah,
it's just...
It's a good point.
It's like the first try almost of like found footage. That's not annoying somebody holding the camera involved with it sometimes.
That's a good
just the way
that's a good aspect. It is like found footage.
Just the way they filmed it. It's kind of like I said, it's kind of like you're just you're like the fly on the wall just watching all this shit go down.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you feel like you're actually there because, like I said, no music. That's one of the big things that once you watch this movie, you'll start watching and be like, something's kind of weird about this. Like, this almost feels real because it doesn't have that music.
People also, too, have this, like I said, it started kind of the slasher boom and some of the gory movies. But what's really wild about this is Tobe Hooper actually wanted this movie to be rated PG.
No, what?
Yeah.
How?
I guess back then there was only like...
How are you going to make this PG? There's no way.
This was before the time set of like, if your horror movie's not rated R, it's dead. You know, it's not a horror flick if it's not rated R.
Yeah.
But in this time frame, it's like either you have a PG movie or it's like rated R or X, and those are like almost like blacklisted. But anyways, he fucking... I don't even know the point I was making with that, Ozark. Mark, where was I going with that? All I know is that he wanted this movie to be PG when this shit was released. And like they sent it through to the editing. Oh, here's where I was going with that, Ozark, Mark.
It came back to him.
The gore, it wasn't over the top. People, when they talk about this movie, they're like, oh, it's all bloody. There's blood and guts. Like all the critics at the time roasted it, saying it was like, torture porn. They didn't use that word then, torture porn.
There's really little to no blood in this movie at all.
Exactly.
It's very implied.
Exactly.
You let your mind do the work, and that is another genius thing to do with a low budget. Like implied gore, to me, I almost like implied gore more than the blood and guts everywhere. Now, don't get me wrong. There's good scenes of bloods and guts. You got to have that in a horror movie. You got to have some blood.
Yeah, give me a little.
But that iconic scene, I believe, where Leatherface takes one of the broads, and he puts him on that hook. Puts her on that hook.
Oh, yeah?
I guess it's like the second kill or whatever it was.
Yeah, putting Pam on the hook.
Pam on the hook. Like, you just see her just, sitting on the hook. There's something underneath her, but there's not blood gushing out. There's nothing.
I think you mentioned it perfect. The kind of, what they did is it shows Leatherface bringing her in, and then he moves a bucket underneath the hook. You know what that bucket's for. Yeah. I know what that bucket's for. And I think that's why people thought it was so bloody. But you're right, man. He puts her up there. And she actually did a good job at acting right there. That was actually like a good job.
Yeah,
there.
their fear, like their actual acting isn't the best, but like when their scream acting, I feel like are like legit screams. Like,
so Tobe did a good thing that many horror people have done throughout time. Kane Hodder has mentioned this. He likes to do this, but Tobe kept Gunnar separate from the rest of the cast. Didn't let them see him fully and shit. Like, they saw each other, but he was separate. Not only because he smelled like shit, but they're like, you gotta stay.
I think that's the main reason.
Right. But it helped with the fear when they first saw him. So they did kind of have that. I'll give you a fun little tidbit, too, about that first kill where he kills Kirk and he hits him with the hammer and he kind of seizes out.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we've kind of seen... Unfortunately, a lot of us have seen people die or see what happens when people twitch out. And so that looks a little over-exaggerated. But I guess that guy was quoted saying, I don't know what actor said it, but he said an actor said, no good actor dies first in a movie. So he was like, oh, okay, I have to be noticed or I have to kind of like do some acting here. But back at that time, people weren't expecting that. That's almost like, you remember in Rob Zombie's Halloween where the kid hits the dude in the head with the baseball bat and he just starts kind of fishing out on the floor?
Yeah.
That was pretty realistic and fucked.
Yeah.
It was the first taste of that, so people were not okay with that. They're like, "Oh my god!"
Well, that seizure, of course, is over the top. Obviously, you watch it like, why is he going? It's kind of comical in some way.
Yeah.
But I believe back then, like another thing that helps that is the sounds of it. The sounds of it. All you do is just silent in there. He hit him with it, and you just hear the. Like, just go with it. It just, those loud knockings from his seizure kind of amplifies that a little bit.
So you know that Texas chainsaw noise, the camera flash noise, you would call it that? It'd be awesome if you could put that sound effect in here. Post-edit, Mark. That would be awesome.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
That noise. Yeah. So the guy who made it would not reveal what the fuck that noise was. And it went to his deathbed. And, like, people tried to get that answer out of him.
Has anybody ever figured it out?
No. So it's like, you know that meme where the girl and guy is in bed and she's like, I bet he's thinking of other women and he's laid on his side thinking of something else. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking of. What the fuck is that noise?
You know what? You know why? I bet you $100 why he never revealed that. You want to know why?
Why?
Because he doesn't fucking remember. I bet you.
They were on
he made that by completely accident, and he completely forgot how he made the sound. There's sometimes I'm making edits like when we used to edit our music back in the day, right? Mm-hmm. There'd be some effects that I'd put on there, and the way it sounded, I was like, I have no idea how I made it sound like that. I don't remember how I got to this point, and it's just gone. So I bet you that's why. I bet you don't even remember how he made that sound.
That's totally possible, man. It's totally possible, but. So we've kind of, I feel like we've got we put it in a nutshell here, if you will, on how this movie became lightning in a bottle, how it worked for that time frame.
Lightning in a bottle, baby, lightning in a bottle.
And this was a very political charged time, President got impeached, but the Vietnam War, seriously, man, like that was like on ABC. So like while you're eating dinner, you could put on the news or just put on and watch the war. Because journalism was actual journalism back then. It wasn't people recording. It wasn't an article about a podcast where somebody said the R word. It wasn't that.
Yeah.
It was actually, I'm in Vietnam with these soldiers. Actually happened. These people were real deal, balls of steel people. And as much as I admire that, and like I said, it kind of ended the war, It doesn't really bump up the morale for war when people are like watching it while you're at home eating your dinner.
Yeah.
But what's that do to young directors, young artists, young people? Like you're watching people fucking die on TV. Like that ain't right, man. So it started messing with people's heads. So you get these movies come out. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You get Wes Craven making Last House on the Left where there's like a brutal rape scene. Where's this coming from? Where's this, crazy polar opposite charge coming from? And in my opinion, I've done a decent amount of studying. It's called monsterology, and it's kind of a nerdy term. But if you go back to the beginning of time and look at what horror movies are out, it's a direct representation of what the fears are of what happened in the world. So let's give an example. When did Godzilla come out? It came out right after World War II in Japan. I wonder why they could think of some radioactive monster. You get what I'm saying?
I think I have an idea
So
of why.
let's look at post 9/11 movies. You know, that's when you start to see your hostile, the fear of being somewhere else,
Yeah.
and then large hordes, zombies and that kind of stuff started to come in after terrorism, where that fucked
Well,
people
zombies
up.
is still. I think. What is it today? Like, I guess it's zombies right now, or is that still going on?
It's kind of tapering off. To be honest with you, I think the new direction. I'm not saying I agree with this direction, but it's been a lot of like the A24 pictures, like your Midsummer, and then even a little Jordan Peele pictures, which I'm not a huge fan of myself, but I think artsy horror pics are in right now. But any horror pics are better than, or flicks are better than none. So it's like, I'll take what I can get. That's a separate convo. But you start to see why these films are made and the time frame that they came out. I then even look at your first horror flick ever to come out, like you're like Nosferatu.
That movie still creeps me out.
Yeah, so you get Germany got their dick kicked in after World War I. Like they lost really bad, and it really messed with the morale of the country.
Well, that's because they tried to go against the world.
Yeah,
Twice.
well, World War I
Who does that?
was a little different with them, but still, they got their ass kicked.
By the world.
Yes, and they go back home, right? And these people, I'm not sure if you know what plastic surgery looked like in World War I, but it wasn't that great. So these people are coming home looking like fucking monsters, like
Yeah.
legit monsters, and they have low morale. You can kind of see how the Nazis were fucking born. But anyways, you get this movie come out of Germany called Nosferatu. And the setup in the movie, right at the beginning, it's a time frame before the Great War. It says a time before like the Great Death. I forget I'm paraphrasing here. But it's a total fucking metaphor for the war. And you just start to, it's not a coincidence why you see these movies come out. And it's like, it's just interesting, you know? If I like to put myself in the shoes of when the movie was coming out, and I like to think like, wow, what did this feel like when it came out? And sometimes you really can get invested. And this is a film that I very much can. I can go right. I was not alive in 74, but I can put myself in those shoes. Being a hippie and whatnot back then. I mean, the hippies were kind of over with, but just like the free...
Free spirits, man.
They're in there fucking reading their horoscopes and whatnot at the beginning. And some people say that this movie has...
What are the girls' pants called? Bell bottoms? Is that what
Yes.
their pants are?
Yes.
Yes.
In this
Bring
movie, there
those
is
back.
some...
There's a significant amounts of butt shots here.
Oh,
and
yeah.
props to that man, whoever called out those shots, because there are some fine booties in this movie.
Well, that's
so if you're a booty man like myself,
Yep.
you get
Butt
some nice
cheeks.
ass shots in there.
Yeah, baby. You know what's neat about that specific shot? So...
Are you talking about the under the bench shot?
Yes. So...
That is
yes.
revolutionary, and it's so it's like 2 seconds long.
But back then, I guess, they just did not have the equipment to do, obviously, scenes like they do now.
No, your camera is the size of, like, the bubble TVs.
Uh-huh.
That's how big the cameras were back then.
And so for the people that don't know the scene we're talking about, so Kirk gets killed. He does the overacting. He starts twitching on the floor.
That's the first kill in the movie, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Pam is outside of the house sitting in a swing. She waits a moment, and then she says, I'm going to go find Kirk. I'm going to go in the house. So when she stands up from the swing, there's a shot where it's like the camera goes under the bench, and it's like a perfect like butt cheek shot, but like not saying it just sexually. I'm saying it's like a beautiful shot with her in it, the house, and the way that it was made was so like revolutionary, I guess, like you said, that Steven Spielberg even asked people from this movie, like, yo, how did you make that part? Like, how did you do that? I want to say it was on the set of Jaws.
It's so smooth. Like, the transition, I was like, they had to have, I think how they did, they obviously had to have some kind of track there, because there's no way that you're getting that big camera smoothly under there by carrying it, because you're going under a bench. Now, there could have been a trick with that where they could have hired the bench maybe to get it under there, but they definitely had a track to go smooth on there. Such a smooth transitions. Like, those, the things at Kings Island where the seats used to move and you're like in a car chase all the time. You know that ride?
Yeah. That's the Italian job.
Yeah, like that. Like, so the big screen, that's kind of what it reminded me of when I looked at it, kind of, because it makes you feel like you're like going under the bench with it, how it was shot.
Yeah.
So it was just, it's amazing when you just, because if you don't know about it, it's going to go right over your head. And you're like,
yeah, it's definitely
it's
for the film nerds out there. That's
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, but that's badass how that was made. And all this legacy left down. I mean, it's still talked about today. How cool is that, man? I mean, I hope nobody talks about me now. If in 50 years after my death, like if somebody still talks about you, that's nuts. That's nuts, man. It's kind of like that.
It's bananas.
Jimi Hendrix, you die at 27. I can still hear Along the Watchtower every day on the radio 50 years later, like.
Purple haze.
Yeah,
Under
dude.
my mind.
You're older than he was when he died,
Yeah.
That's nuts. And then he lived on all this time. It's just very cool.
It's crazy to think about it, too. Like, they had no idea what they were making when they were doing this. They had no idea the implications of what happened after this movie.
No, they did not know. But I'm starting to feel something in the air. Do you feel that, Mark?
Oh,
I think
are
it's
you
time
talking about what do you know here? Anyways, I'll tell you what I know here. I know some things here. I actually know a fact about this movie that you may or may not know.
You did some research. I'm happy for
Yes,
this. Let's
I am
see.
not a nerd, but I know this, so I'm going to be the nerd here for a second. Check this out, right? So, did you know that this movie right here, was filmed on a private farm?
Okay.
Private farm.
I know the
okay?
farm, yes.
Very interesting. But wait, there's more. Okay?
But wait!
There's more! On this farm, they were growing massive amounts of marijuana.
Drugs?
Mary Jane.
Well, that's not.
The devil's lettuce. They had it was apparently just a big ass pot farm.
No shit.
Which is crazy because I think the cops even were called to here or they stopped by during this filming because people weren't used to that. They come here, they're like, what are you boys doing around here?
Yeah, rural Texas in the 70s.
Like, what are you boys doing? Like, there's people running around. Some guy's in a fucking wearing somebody's skin, chasing these people with a chainsaw. Like, what's going on?
That's funny as shit.
And that's so funny, though, because I guess the cops knew about it, the pot, because, I mean, whatever,
Times were different back then.
Absolutely, but that's pretty crazy, they're shooting in on a pot farm.
So that's what you know.
It might explain why they were so high out of their minds during it.
Let me tell you something that I know.
What do you know here?
If you saw this movie, you might know a couple things. Okay, but here's one thing that I know. So, the actor who played Franklin, the guy in the wheelchair?
Yes.
Paul Partain is the fella's name, okay? Mm-hmm. So, apparently, this man wasn't just annoying on the movie as his character Franklin. Apparently, nobody really liked this guy a whole lot, okay? And as I mentioned earlier, these people didn't get paid very well. So, this guy was actually kind of smart. He stomped his foot and he says, look, I'm not filming the last scene unless you give me my money right here, right now. So they give this guy a check, right? And they put it in the breast pocket of his shit. Mm-hmm. It's in his shit in a scene in the movie. The scene in the movie where Franklin rolls down the hill and falls out of his wheelchair. That's the last shot with him in the movie. And you could see a little bitty paycheck right there in his shit. Right there in his shit.
Like in the actual movie, you can see it right there.
Yeah, he's ready to go.
You know what you remind me of right now?
Oh.
You know Family Guy?
Yes.
The nerd character, orange hair with glasses. Can you talk like this?
Okay.
Yeah, oh
Meg.
God, yeah, that. He's giving this like, as we see here, this is Neil Shatner's coffee cup in the scene.
Actually,
that's who you remind me of right now.
No big deal. We all hear people.
Though. How much was the check worth, you think?
So, let me go into this just a little bit and tell you a little bit more that we don't know, okay? So, the way that they put that $80,000 $80,000 together. They had to borrow a lot of it, okay?
Yeah.
And there was some mob money in on this. There was a production company that was involved in mob money. So this film wasn't, to explain this simply, the film wasn't just owned by one person. It was owned by a bunch of different people. Yeah. And each of these actors got a small piece of one of those companies. So they got like a small fraction.
Yeah.
So they didn't make anything. Gunnar Hansen said in 1975 in July, the following one whole year after the movie comes out, this guy gets a check for $40 fucking dollars.
Oh my God.
$40. But he said initially, I think he got a check maybe for like $600 or $800 right from the beginning.
Well,
so,
you said it took about like 2 weeks, around 2 to 3 weeks to film, so that's not too bad, I guess.
$840 to make a $30 million movie? Come on now.
Well, but you didn't know it was going to make $30 million.
No, but these people should get some royalties.
Yeah, they should, but that's where they got fucked, because they probably didn't sign anything, because they thought, okay, this movie ain't going to make $30 million.
Yeah, so the paper was all messed up. So maybe Mr. Paul Partain there, the fellow who played Franklin, not a dumb guy, okay? No. Let me tell you something else I know.
What do you know here?
So Mr. Gunnar Hansen, we've mentioned his name many times. This fella, in order to get in the role for Leatherface, he says, I'm a volunteer at a mental institution, and he really did. And he volunteered to help work there. He didn't just go there and watch people who had issues, but, he wanted to develop a little bit of the character for Leatherface. Obviously, he has special needs. So this fucking guy goes and volunteers, and he helps people out for a couple weeks, like not like a nurse, but, hanging out with the people, whatever you do, fucking play checkers, whatever they got going on. He went there and did it. And that's why on the screen, you could see his body language is impeccable,
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's real dedication, because they didn't pay him to go to that mental place for 2 weeks.
No, they didn't.
So he volunteered there, he worked, and that's the perfect place to go to observe and observe little habits from everybody. Mm-hmm. You don't see many people doing that now.
Gunnar was very much a poet, very much like a theater kid. He was a big theater kid, like a nerd. He said he used to do like mice and men stuff.
So you went from doing authentic plays to Leatherface. Here, get high as shit and run around and chase this girl with a real chainsaw. And get paid $600 for it.
Yeah, what a way to be remembered, and he passed away, I believe, in 2014, which is sad, but I'm happy that his legacy is put down in an audiobook. Wouldn't that be cool if I guess we kind of have that here, but, to have somebody's thoughts in their heart, speaking out in a book, just that person talking, like a well-delivered statement. That's just neat to have after somebody's gone, Yeah. I wish Robert Englund would finally do an audiobook, but I don't know when that'll happen. So that's all I can tell you. That's all I know.
That's all you know.
That's all I know.
Well, that's all we know here.
Wow, that was very educational.
I did not know any of those things.
I did not either. Those guys are great.
Very interesting fact, though.
Very good stuff.
Yes.
Actually, that was pretty interesting.
That's it. That's you. If you.
I have a problem with my essays. My father is very successful.
You see, there's a check here.
Do you think that you have the gumption and you have the love in your heart?
The gumption?
Yes.
What does that mean?
You
don't know what that word means.
I do. I'm trying to give it to you. Do you have the...
Don't use it in a sentence. That's not going to make me understand it any better.
The balls, too.
Okay.
Do you have the energy, too?
Uh-huh. Gumpin'.
Make the well-deserved episodes for some of the Chainsaw sequels. Especially number 2. My favorite, by the way.
How many Texas are there?
So there's 8, and there's actually one canceled film. I think it was filmed, but it was canceled. So...
How do you film it and then cancel it?
Texas Chainsaw 2 was kind of comedic, very comedic, but awesome, but scary, very 80s, okay?
Yeah.
They made a follow-up film to that with, Bill Moseley and Chop Top, the guy with, he was heating up the fucking clothes hanger and peeling pieces of his skin off, requesting songs. Amazing. Horror legend, obviously. But... they made it off of that, and I guess that wasn't the direction they were trying to take, because then they came out with Leatherface, like part 3, that had like Viggo Mortensen and those guys, which is good. But I really love Next Generation as well. That gave us Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger.
Matthew McConaughey,
dude, it's one of his first movies, dude, and he's nuts. He's one of the Chainsaw family. He's one of the family. So he's like,
dude, I can picture him being so good at that.
Oh, if you guys haven't seen that, at least just YouTube it. YouTube the Texas Chainsaw Next Generation and just Matthew McConaughey.
Get him, Leatherface. All right.
I do believe this man's gonna cut you.
Dude, he's such a he's not like a impeccable actor, Matthew McConaughey, but just Matthew McConaughey in general.
If Matthew McConaughey wasn't a beautiful man, and I say that as a straight man, but if he wasn't a beautiful man, would he be where he is?
No, it's well, that and the way he talks too,
and that Texas accent, the way he drops his S's.
All right.
It's all about your S's. And yeah,
I
like his movies, but he's weird. He's a weird guy. He's a strange guy.
But I could see him being a crazy Chainsaw family member
and
doing
you'll love
it well. That's like a perfect role for him.
So, that being said, are you willing to participate? Maybe, I don't think we'll get into it this season, but I think we need to have a season of sequels. Does that make sense?
A season of sequels. Or maybe we can have a sequel season to a season.
I don't know what that means.
It's a sequel season that's all sequels to the previous season.
That was all
Follow
sequels?
me here. Yes.
Okay. Yes. So, but I do think that would be a fun season, because some of these franchises, it's not just the first movie that's awesome. Some of them, I love lots of them. Like Nightmare on Elm Street, I could literally do an episode for each of those fucking movies.
Yeah.
I mean, I could do it for all of them, because I'm a big fucking nerd.
Yeah, you are.
I don't have any friends.
Nerd!
I don't have any friends.
That's you.
Yes, that is me. But
in a good way, though. I mean, you know a lot of interesting things. Like, just a couple movies that you're telling me about these movies, and the things you know about them make it more interesting for me to go watch these movies, knowing these things.
DVDs really helped, man. I was born in 89, Mark. I think you were 91, correct?
Yes.
So when DVDs, we were teenagers pretty much when DVDs came out. They had these things called commentaries, and commentaries, obviously everyone knows what those are, and they're not that popular now, but back then, man, you only had so many DVDs, and not everybody had cable. I didn't have cable, so if you had I remember getting a double disc for Freddy vs. Jason. There was a whole double disc of bonus features, and then there was like a commentary to the movie with Robert Englund, Freddy, and then the guy who played Jason in this one, and the director, Ronnie Wu, and I was like, you're watching the movie, and they'll tell you about shit in the movie, and then you get to watch the scene differently. You could be like, oh, I had a fever on that day, and I felt like shit, but I did it anyways, and it actually turned out great. You'll always watch it like that, and it's just kind of neat. You feel like you were there. It feels like you have a little...
Yeah.
And I really fell deep into those commentaries, man.
Yeah.
I loved those, and I guess a lot of other people did too. I see them at the conventions, but that's what really helped me. Aside from just the movies alone.
Exactly. So I think knowing these things, even just knowing some of the things we just talked about here in this episode about this movie. Again, this movie, the way it's shot, spectacular once you realize it. But like I said, the acting is not that good. It's almost cheesy because they're not good actors. But I will say this because we're running out of time here. But one of my best examples is knowing more about this movie made me appreciate the final girl scene, basically when she practically gets away. So when she's running, okay, I'm still for the past 20 minutes she's been running. So she's finally getting away. She finally gets to the street, and then she's getting chased by whatever his name is, not Leatherface, but one of the family members, I guess.
Yeah, the hitchhiker.
Yeah. It's just horrible acting because he tries to hold her in the street, and you got the semi coming.
Yes.
And he just sitting there holding her barely, and then she gets away, and he just stands there for at least 5 to 10 seconds. It seems like not getting out of the way, and he just holds up his hands ah.
They actually filmed that in reverse. He did a very good job. They filmed that in reverse,
Did
and
they?
and it worked brilliantly. Yeah.
It's so nuts. But then he's standing there, and then you get the shot of the guy in the semi like turning his wheel, and his semi ain't turning, like, and then he just gets blasted. It's so comical to me. And then after that, it's like Leatherface. It's almost like they're tired of chasing each other at this point because they're just chasing each other so slow. He's running all crazy, like special ed type of stuff here. He's running, and she's limping. And then the semi driver that just ran the hitchhiker over gets out, and then it says Black Mania on it. This final scene is so comedic to me. You have to enjoy it. And he gets out. Well, another favorite part is once he gets out and tries to help her, Leatherface comes lipping around the semi and chases them. He's like, "Oh fuck that!" He just turns around and runs. He's like, "Nope," and he's cutting the semi like. You know, always in horror movies where you look at it and you're like, why are they doing this? Like, don't go in there or something. Like, obviously they have to because it wouldn't be a horror movie. Like, most of the horror movies, like, if you see a house, you'd be like, I'm not going in there. And that's the end of the movie. So he's cutting the side of it, like, just buying time. It looks like he's carving his initials in the side. Like, he's not trying to get into the semi at all. It's just like a Benny Hill type chase at the end. It's so comedic, and you gotta watch it if you haven't seen it. Just look at it like that. It's so hilarious.
That was one of my favorite.
Like, when she gets into the back of the truck, the final truck, when the guy comes and finally picks her up, he starts going away so slow to the point like Leatherface is keeping up with the truck. It's like, what are you doing? Like, pull off. Like, there's horrible acting in it, but it's so cheesy and it's so wonderful, and it's very enjoyable if you look at it from that perspective.
There is a Bill Burr comedy sketch that was pretty funny that you would probably like that had to deal with the end of that scene where he said, he said, I want to drive past a pack of feminists or something and just say something super fucked up like, get back in the kitchen. And he said, just drive off and watch them standing there like Leatherface in the final scene, just spinning the... That's what that just reminded me of.
It does.
But I think so... as well as far as the fact, if you haven't seen it, you need to see it. Like Mark said, try to keep that kind of mindset. There's some humor to it, but also a little bit of craziness. If you're a film person, if you know how films are made, you really can see it through a different eye.
Yeah, because you can dissect this movie all you want. Like, when I was just watching clips of it, I was just pointing out things that made it so unique. And when you can absorb that and see it, not just watch it as a movie, because you're not going to get scared in this movie at all, at least not nowadays, but you can really appreciate the fact of how it was shot, everything that comes into it, and keep in mind that this was a very revolutionary film in horror, and you would appreciate it a lot more.
Fuck yeah, man. Well, that's good, man. I like that. I'm glad that we're able to do this episode, do it right on the second season. And if you guys like this episode, I really would like some feedback. Obviously, whatever episode you guys want to hear in the future, if you guys want to get a hold of us, you guys can find us on our Twitter, and that would be Twitter, and it's Horror Sloppy. They're so lame. They wouldn't let me do sloppy horror.
So if you're because you say horror like whore.
Well, no, I'm saying like I tried to make my handle sloppy horror, and it switched it around to horror sloppy. So if you guys want to get a hold of us, that's HORRORSLOPPY, and you can find us at that handle. Shoot us a shout out. Let us know what you're thinking. Okay,
we always tell me what you're wearing. You have to tell me what you're wearing.
Yes.
I don't care what it is.
Please send a little check of hair, just a little chunk of your hair. We will put it on our hair wall here.
Yes.
Not a big deal. Not a big deal. We will have a P.O. box soon for all the hair. We'll keep you posted on that.
Don't tell people that.
Or skin, fingernail, whatever.
I don't want people sending us their body waste.
Well, not waste, hair. It was living until they sent it to us. It's not like a weird thing. I do that.
Dude, some moms like collect their children's hair.
Yeah, I know.
After their first haircut. That's fucking voodoo shit. That's weird.
I know.
Don't send me your hair.
I know.
Send me pictures of you half naked.
I
don't care who you are, male or female. We have a half naked wall here. We don't have a hair wall. We have a half naked wall. So send us your. It has to be in a Polaroid, the one you got to flex too.
Yes.
Send us that.
Yes. Also, Social Security. No, I'm just kidding.
We
Yeah,
want
hell
to
yeah.
talk to you about your car's extended warranty.
Well, hell yeah. This is Sloppy Horror Podcast. I hope to hear from you guys, and stick around for our next episode.
Sloppy Horror Podcast, baby.